Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're going to be looking at the history of the Ouija board, where it comes from and how it came to be such a massive influence within horror films and also the occult. So if you like all things magical, scary and paranormal, turn out the lights, grab a drink, it's gonna get interesting. So Ouija board is also known as a spirit board or a talking board. Ouija actually became a trademark to Peter Brothers, which is an American toy company, and then later to the Hasbro Incorporated. It was commercially introduced on July 1st of 1890 by Elijah Bond and was originally sold as a parlor game. Pearl Curran would actually popularise the idea of it being used for divination during the First World War, as the claims were made that the spirits and people who had passed could talk through the board itself. The origins of the Ouija board actually come from the concept of automatic writing, which dates back to 1100 AD during the Song Dynasty. Now the method itself was called Fuji, which uses the planchette to write out words. It would actually later be banned during the Qing Dynasty, as there was a lot of negative effects and a lot of negative energy said to be associated with this method. Similar methods of divination and spirit communication would be developed throughout India, Greece, Roman and medieval Europe. The concept of the Ouija board that we now recognise as today was actually developed in Baltimore in Maryland in 1890. This followed the Civil War from 1861 to 1865 and the craze of the talking board in Ohio. Throughout the barracks of Ohio, many of the men were talking about the talking boards and how they were using it to communicate with fallen fellow soldiers, and even families talking about how they used it to talk to loved ones. It was actually Elijah Bond who patented the idea to merge the talking board and the planchette together, as the talking board didn't actually use the planchette and the planchette was somewhat of a forgotten idea. In 1901, Bond's employee William Ford started production of his own boards under the name of Ouija. Charles Kennard, where Ford had worked, claimed he learned the name Ouija from the board itself. He claimed it was an ancient Egyptian word that had meant good luck. When Ford would eventually take over, he actually changed the origin stories of where the name came from, and so it was a merging of the French and the German word for yes. Ford would reinvent the board and actually went on to claim that it was actually himself that was the original inventor of this specific board. Interestingly enough, scientific experiments were conducted in 1853 around the talking board, well before the Ouija board's invention. The results actually concluded that the majority of the participants involved were unconsciously moving the planchette, though no concrete evidence was ever recorded. Much later, more experiments were held in a much more controlled environment, and the results showed that the participants were actually moving it involuntarily. In 2012, studies aimed at yes or no questions found that the answers were actually more accurate than any other formal answer given on the board. Now, there are many religions that actually shun the use of Ouija boards, talking boards and anything to do with communicating with the spirits. This is because many of them state that you're not actually talking with spirits, you're actually talking with demonic entities or evil entities, as it were. These things, one of the most notorious demons to be associated with this is the demon. I don't really want to say it out loud, guys, just because sometimes they do say that the mention of the name can encourage this particular entity to come to you, so that's why it's written on the bottom of the screen. Interestingly enough, the Ouija board was actually used in 1994 in a murder trial, but was later stated to be insufficient evidence towards the actual trial itself. Now, some of the reasons why a lot of spiritual activists don't like using Ouija boards is to do with the energy and how it uses it. Now, when you use it and you're using the planchette, essentially what they say is what you're doing is allowing the entities to touch your hand and physically come into your space to move the planchette. Once you've allowed them past that space, trying to get them to leave that space again can actually be somewhat impossible or very, very difficult. Not only that, but when you call out into the spirit world, you're never quite sure what it's going to answer. Very much like if you were to, because I'm in the middle of the street, and just call out to anyone to respond, anyone could respond. The same as with the Ouija board, when you call out to things, anything could be responding. Even if you're looking for a specific entity, any other entity can actually come through and pretend to be that entity, and that's where things can go wrong. Now, because you're allowing them to use your own physical energy and come into your space to do that, if you're unaware of what entities you're actually summoning, this is why it's incredibly highly avoid it, or they say to avoid it, because once that's formed an attachment, it can sometimes be impossible to get rid of it. Now, of course, there are many stories out there, especially on No Sleep Reddit and other sites like that, of Ouija boards, aka accounts that have gone horribly wrong. I'm actually going to be reading out one of these stories to you. This is by somebody called Kelly. It can be found on the internet, but this is her story, and actually with the encounter of the demon. Now during this, I'm not going to say it out loud, I will just leave it blank and put it up on the bottom of the screen so you can read it, just because I don't personally like saying the name of this particular demon, because it can actually attract him to your space unwillingly, even without the Ouija board. Hi, my name is Kelly, and I believe, especially after reading your information, that demon has attached itself to me. I always feel fear or sadness, and I tend to get very tired very quickly. As time passes, the demon is getting more physical, and I hear him occasionally. I innocently made contact with the demon through a Ouija board last year while at a friend's house. The session was nothing special or dramatic, but the name that appeared on the board that night has haunted me ever since. I've always been into photography, taking pictures of close friends and family. However, over the past year, the demon has taken that away from me. I started noticing that after this session, anyone who I would care about, who I would take a recent photo of, would be affected by. As weird as it may seem, numerous people would ask me about my experience only after I take their pictures, even though they have no previous knowledge of me ever using a Ouija board. The demon would also distort my photos. I have photos where you can see a few different demons. Did I open a portal to hell? I feel now that I am always being watched, and I am constantly in a state of fear. Whenever I try to get help regarding this problem, or I get to having answers or how to rid myself of it, the demon gets mad and destroys my photos by poltergeist activity. I do believe in God, I love him, and I put crosses around everywhere. However, I find the crosses torn to pieces after placing them on the wall. Sometimes I would even find scratch marks on the crosses themselves. I recently did an EVP session in my house to see if I could document the activity, or if I was simply going insane. When I asked, "What is your purpose for being here?" the response I got on the audio recorder was "Soul Taker." I still have not gotten rid of him, and he's getting more noticeable. I realise they feed off fear, but it's hard not to be scared. So that's just one story of how things could go horribly wrong. You really need to be careful. Even with blessings, protection, saging, all these things, you still never know. You've got to be so careful, and just generally try to avoid using them if you can. But there you have it, guys. There's just the brief history of the Ouija board with one account of how the Ouija board can go horribly wrong. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's not a very long one. If you do want any more videos like this, do pop a comment below, and I will definitely get around to making some more. If you wanted me to read out any more paranormal experiences from other people, I can certainly do that. As a blessing from me to you, may your house always be filled with the sound of music, and you always wake up to the smell of baking in your house. And until the next time I see you on the flip side, have a lovely week, and I'll see you then. Bye!